Hello everyone, my name is Greg and I dev stuff. Welcome everyone to episode 12 of JRPG Tutorial. In this episode we are going to make a wandering enemy encounters. Before we begin, clean your root folder. So we are finally approaching the combat system. You might find it a little weird that instead of doing character stats like HP or making party system with multiple characters, we are doing the enemies on the world map first. The reason is very simple. I want to spice up the tutorial a little. I don't want you to get bored by doing another GUI part again after we spend multiple parts on inventory system. Okay, good. First of all, let's be real. Nobody likes step count system. Everyone and their cats prefer encounters which you can see on the world map. So we will be doing wandering enemies on the world map. Let's begin by creating a capsule on the world map. For now this will represent the wandering enemy group. So call it an enemy group or something. Add rigid body. Log the X and Z rotation on rigid body. Then add nav mesh agent. Then create and add new script and call it enemy group. Before we continue, we need to bake the nav mesh. To do that, go to the window on top panel. In the AI, click navigation. Let's not bother with the obstacle avoidance for now, so just simply select your floor and bake it. This is just for testing, we will be coming back to nav mesh way later. Prefab the enemy group and delete it from the scene. Create a new folder called Gizmos. And I will import an icon I will use for enemy spawner. You can use any kind of PNG icon you found online, or you can draw the one yourself, which I did. I will link a good site for free game icons online in the description. Create an empty object and call it spawn group. This object will be a container for enemy spawners. Besides that, we will use it as a setting area for those enemy spawners. Create and add enemy spawner container script. Then create an empty object and call it enemy spawner. Parent it to spawn group. Move it to the position where you want to spawn your enemy group. Then create and add new script called enemy spawner. Open the newly created script. First add onDraw gizmos and call gizmos draw icon with parameter transform position, pass to the icon, and true or false for scalable. So draw icon show an gizmo icon on the scene. This is very important for empty objects, kind of objects on the scene, because without any kind of gizmo, the object without any rendering capability will be virtually invisible on the scene. So for stuff like nodes, spawn points, triggers, anything without renderer component, gizmo icons are essential. Okay, good. So enemy spawner script will be doing simple job of spawning wandering enemies group on the map, while enemy spawner container will contain setting for the spawners. So open enemy spawner container and let's define public variable called enemy group prefab. This variable will contain the prefab of enemy group you want to spawn on the map. This is useful if you want to spawn a variety of different looking enemies group on world map. For example, for guards you will use metal armored guy, and for animals wolves or something. Okay, now open the enemy spawner script. Inside, let's define enemy spawner container, reference and store it. We can easily access it because our enemy spawner should be a child of the enemy spawn group. In case we made a mistake and no enemy spawner were referenced for any reason, let's show a warning. Let's call and create a new method spawn. Inside spawn method, we will check if our enemy spawner container reference is not empty. And in that case, we will instantiate enemy group prefab from enemy spawner container. Use position of the enemy spawner as a position of the spawn. Open the editor and let's check it. Reference the enemy group prefab on the spawn group, and then if you launch the game it should spawn the enemy group object. Good. So if we copy this enemy spawner, you will see that it will spawn enemy groups all over the place. Okay, now we will implement rudimental AI for the wandering enemies. So we will use our spawn point as a node for wandering. That means that our enemy group will wander roughly around the area of the spawn point. So let's store the reference to the spawn point on the enemy group. Make a variable for the reference in the enemy group. Then, where we instantiate the enemy, assign the reference to the spawn point transform in enemy group. Okay, good. Now inside the enemy group on start, link the reference to nullMesh agent into variable. Don't forget to link the Unity AI library. Create a new method called setDestination. This method will set a new destination to our rendering enemy. To do that, cache the position of the spawner. Go into enemy spawner and define public float, wandering distance variable, with default value of 5. We will use this variable to determine maximum distance our enemy group can wander off from the spawn point. In the enemy group, let's save the reference to the enemy spawner besides its transform. And in the setDestination, add to the destination position vector 3 right multiplied by random range and use the maximum distance as a parameter for random range. Then vector 3 forward with the multiplication. In random range, as a first parameter, I used a negative maximum distance, and as the second parameter, just a maximum distance. So if you have a maximum distance equals to 5, this will produce a number between -5 to +5, which will define a square-like space where your enemy can wander around. Then call setDestination on agent and assign randomly created position. Now to make the enemy wander around and not simply stand in place, we need to tell it somehow that he has to change his movement destination after some time passed. Define private float variable, timer and serialized max timer. We will use timer to force our enemies to wander around randomly after a certain amount of time passed. Set default value of max timer as 20f. So in the update, simply decrease timer by time delta time. And if it's reached 0, set it to max timer and set destination. To spice it up, let's multiply the timer after assigning it by random.value. Value return random value from 0 to 1, so that will return the result equals from 0 to max timer value. Let's test this. Okay, that works. Okay, as the last touch for this episode, let's make them chase Unity-chan if they see her. This behavior will mirror the Unity-chan interaction system. So to save some time, let's go and copy it to the enemy group script. Okay, now let's rename the check interact to check vision. And let's add a new transform variable target. Now instead of using interactable, we have to identify Unity-chan somehow. We will use a component in the same sense as an interface. Let's call it targetable. This will allow us to make enemy chase not only Unity-chan, but any object with this component. So, for example, if later on you want to make a puzzle where you need to attract attention to, for example, certain object to avoid detection, you can just simply drop this component to this object and the enemy will chase this object. So create and add new script to Unity-chan called targetable. So now to the most intense part. Select update and start and delete them. That's it. Now in the editor, choose an enemy prefab and open it. Create an empty object and call it Vision Box Pivot. Then assign this Vision Box Pivot to the box pivot in the enemy group script. Good. Back to the enemy group script. In the check vision, check for targetable instead of interactable component. If it is present, then assign the object as a target. In the update, call check vision. Let's move what we have in the update right now into separate method called rendering. If target is null, then call rendering. If it is not null, call new method called chase. Inside this new method, simply set the destination to current position of the target. That should be it. If you start the game and approach the enemy, he should try to chase you down, if he sees you. And if he loses track of you, he will wander back after some time to his designated position. Oh, I forget to nullify the target. Oops. After fixing this mistake, it should work fine. This will be the end of this episode. In the next episode we will actually initiate the combat, and we'll start implementing stats into the game. If you have any questions or any ideas about code, please leave your comment below. If you are interested in seeing what will come out of this, please subscribe. If you want to support further, you can find my Patreon in the description. With best regards, see you in the next episode.